Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Hey everybody, it's Aldo Gandhi, and I just want to let you know really quickly that our swag shop is reopened. DeepDishTees.com is where you go, and that's tees with T-E-E-S. Clever name, guys. They're the new home of our merchandise. You can get t-shirts, you can get caps, you can get coffee mugs, you can get hoodies, you can get all sorts of good stuff, and you'll help out the bar room with the purchase. So head over to DeepDishTees.com. Get an in-depth preview of the Chicago Bears' next opponent and John Buffone's passionate rants on Buffone 55 Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central. Welcome to this special Thursday episode of Greg Gabriel Talks Football. Greg, how are you, my man?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing good.
So if my dog interrupts us, it's because I got the doors open. Just so you know, if he starts barking, I'm going to have to get off for a second and shut the doors, bring him in here, lie him down.
I'll do a little song and dance. You were telling me about your dog. He loves just laying out in front of the fireplace and getting all that heat, huh?
Yep. Yeah.
And a great watch.
He was born in Kentucky, so I say it has to do with that. What part of Kentucky? I have no idea because he was a rescue dog.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. A rescue dog, huh?
Yeah.
Good for you. More people need to do that. At least that's what I've been told. So.
We thought we were getting a lab mix because he looks like a yellow lab. There's not. I had the DNA done. Not an ounce of lab in him.
Not an ounce, huh?
Not an ounce. Nothing.
Wow.
He's got a lot of mastiff in him, and that's why.
We already got questions coming into the chat room. Bruce Ollie.
I want to just bring up one political thing here.
Sure, go right ahead.
For politicians in this city, first we got a mayor that says, "Oh, the league's not going to let them move out to the suburbs. That's never going to happen." Yeah, well, she got straightened out on that in about 15 seconds. Now you got some dingbat councilmen saying, "Well, let's have the city buy the team." Where's the city got $3+ billion and maybe more than that? They can't even shovel the streets correctly or plow the streets correctly, let alone buy a football team and run it.
Yeah, and I think it's against the NFL rules to have a city purchase a.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah,
but this guy, what's he trying to do? Use this for re-election or something?
Yeah,
he's got to be a total imbecile to even come up with something like this.
Yeah,
I guess they tore him apart on the score yesterday.
Yes, as well as they should have, because that was just ridiculous.
And he was on. I'm surprised he stayed on it. I didn't listen to it, but he probably, if I was him, I probably would have got off the phone.
Yeah, I'm with you. They taught him a lot about what can and cannot be done. And so he must have walked off that show with his tail between his legs if he has a tail.
That's typical politician.
You ain't kidding. All right. Let me start with this question from Bruce Ollie Walter Jordan. He says, so if Larry Borum was a 3rd-round pick, how would you evaluate his play so far? I just got to add, it doesn't matter what round he is. Right?
He's a draft pick.
That's right.
The Bears had him rated as around a 3rd-round pick. They got him in the 5th round, but that's not unusual. Everybody's board is different. We've talked about that, at draft time. There's no 2 boards alike in the National Football League. So you're in the 5th round, you're hoping to get a guy that you have rated as a 3rd rounder, and you're hoping that in the 6th round you get a guy that you got rated as a 3rd to 4th rounder, and I'm sure that's where they had Khalil Herbert on their board. And every other team in the league's the exact same way. Everybody loves their draft the day after the draft. You don't find out till 6 months later, it was worth a damn. But right now, we haven't seen Tevin Jenkins yet, even though he's practicing now, which is a good thing. We haven't seen him yet, but overall, the draft hasn't been too bad.
And that's the big question I've been hearing all over the place, social media, radio talk shows, blah, 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 is what about Tevin Jenkins? Where do you put him in this lineup? Do you tell
where they're going to play him in the first place? Left tackle.
Okay, so you tell Peters to sit down and move him into guard?
Well, first of all, you got to make sure the guy's ready to play.
Yeah.
He didn't have a preseason. He didn't have a training camp.
Right.
So the last time this guy's played any type of football was during OTAs and minicamp back in the spring. So we know he's in shape because he's been doing stuff for the last few weeks, along the side of the field, getting in shape. I'm sure his cardiovascular shape is good. His strength is good. But now you got to get him inserted into a game somehow. They're going to – I'm not going to say they're going to sit. I think they're going to wait and see what happens, and if once you get – mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, then I think they insert him in to get him some play time. But the guy playing there right now has been playing pretty good. He's arguably played better than anybody on the line so far, consistently. And to go back to the one question about Borum, I don't care if he was a 1st-round pick or a 7th-round pick or an undrafted free agent. It was a steal where they got him. The guy's a hell of a football player, and he's only going to get better.
Yeah, it really does appear. Now, he went through an interesting transformation in his body because after the season was up, the college football season, he really lost a lot of weight and added a lot of muscle, lost fat and added muscle.
Right. And Juan Castillo, every time he opens his mouth about, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, about how much the guy's weight, he adds about 10 pounds. So who knows what he really weighs? Because he the other day you say, oh, he weighs 341. Well, training camp he was 331, and he had dropped to 322 from the 350 or 360 weight at Missouri when he had his pro day. So he's above 320. He's probably around 330. He's a big dude. But if you watch tape of him at Missouri last year, and you can see it on YouTube, he's big. He was a lot fatter, put it that way, than he is right now. He's done a really good job, and you can do that if you do it correctly. You can do that in 6, 7, 8 months. I'm perfect testament to that.
You are indeed.
I lost 40, and I'm bragging. I'm saying I look good, but
you do actually. From one man to another.
Don't get sweet on me. But hey, I like the pick. Yeah, the only guy I'd like to see, come up to the varsity at some time before the season's over is Daz Ferguson.
Yeah, that would be great.
What he can do, and sometimes it's hard for receivers. Depending on what their route tree was in college, and what their adjustments they had, if they had adjustments, etc., and then making that adjustment to the pro level. they're just not ready. And the Bears got some veteran receivers in front of them that they feel more comfortable with. So we may or may not see them. It might have to wait till next year when it's going to be like, Vildor, where you didn't see him at all last year, except for maybe some special teams. You saw him at the end of the year, but then, he's a regular this year.
Regarding Tevin Jenkins, I want to get back to that subject just a moment. Brad Biggs, your good buddy, wrote in, I think, his 10 thoughts comment, or maybe it was his Q&A about Tevin Jenkins, and that there are limited padded practices left for the next 3-4 weeks, like only 1 or 2 because of the CBA. So that's going to make it even harder to assess whether Jenkins is ready to play or what position he might be better suited for.
Well, he's going to be working at the tackle position. So but you can do this. What's a padded practice and what they do, you can do things with offensive linemen. They wear these shells.
Mm-hmm.
Those like fake shoulder pads.
Yeah.
Okay. And they can do one-on-ones with those. Okay. And so he can work on his hand use. And after practice, he can do it with the practice squad and the young defensive linemen. He can do that stuff for an hour under a coach's eye if he wants.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is where Brad is 100% correct. You only get, once the season starts, you get like 12 or 13 padded practices for the rest of the year, which I think is ridiculous. But
it is.
That's what the rules are. So everybody's got to play by the same rules.
Yeah.
But like I said, you got a helmet on, you got those shells on. There's stuff you can do.
And so I would imagine that the number one priority, I mean, I think this is pretty much common sense, is that you want to really evaluate his health after every single practice. How's that back feeling? Do you flexibility, all that stuff? Take us through that.
That's you got that 3-week window. That's what that's all about.
Okay.
At the end of, so this is the first week. At the end of that, now you saw what happened with Montgomery. That first week back, he was brought up to the varsity, and he was activated on Saturday, the day before the game, and played Sunday. Started on Sunday. So theoretically, they could do the same thing with Jenkins. I doubt they would, unless there was an injury or something this week, and they had to bring up another lineman. But you're going to find out exactly where he is during that 3-week period. Then they got to make a decision. You either shut him down and he reverts back to IR, or you got to bring him up to the varsity. There's no in between.
One of the I think big challenges this coaching staff has is if they lose another game or two, are they going to start looking at players who could be building blocks for the future, like a Daz Newsome, and insert players who might give them less of a chance to win, but can help the Ryan Pace and management make decisions on these players' futures? Do you see it that way?
Yeah. I think that's the case in almost every club where they got a losing record right now.
Yeah.
You gotta start playing some young people and see what they can do. But you can't do it until you're mathematically eliminated. Personally, I'll jump ahead. They're going to win this Sunday against Baltimore.
Ooh, tell me why you feel that way.
Well, number one, they played pretty damn good at home. Right?
Yes.
And Baltimore, the last few weeks, hasn't been going this way. It's been going this way.
They have indeed.
Okay. Now, I don't know what Lamar Jackson did today practice-wise, but he didn't practice yesterday and because of illness. But he's had some, aches and pains too. I know if I was coordinating the defense for that, I'd put a spy on him. Yeah, you put one athletic linebacker on him, and where he goes, that guy goes.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, right?
Right, and or it could be a safe, one of the safeties. You bring in another safety and do that. But you can't let him have free reign because he can bust a play at any time.
Right. Well, this was Sean Desai earlier today on Thursday addressing the media. He was asked about Lamar Jackson.
He's a unique and special talent, and you see why he's in the MVP conversation. He's deserving of that, and his game has developed so much. They've done a great job there with him. Obviously, he can beat you with his feet. He can beat you with his arm, and he's throwing the ball accurately, over the top of the defenders, and he's hitting a lot of underneath throws also. So I think he's playing the full complement of what you want a quarterback to play like in this league. He can extend plays, obviously, and even when he's extending it, he's not like some other guys where he's looking to run right away. He's still looking to kind of gas you in the pass game, and he's got the confidence to beat you in the run game.
When you evaluated him coming out of college, did you foresee that he was going to have this proficiency at playing the quarterback position?
I didn't think he'd be the passer that he's become. And I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring it up anyway. Because there was, I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, a given in the scouting community about quarterbacks that inaccurate quarterbacks in college don't all of a sudden become accurate in the pros because of the tighter windows, style of offense, the defenses you're playing against, etc. Well, there's two quarterbacks right now playing in the league that were inaccurate quarterbacks in college that are two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And that's Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson.
Interesting.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the player himself and that he's taken it upon himself to get better and work on his deficiencies. I know that's what Josh Allen has done. I'm sure that's if you go back and you look at tape of Lamar Jackson when he was at Louisville and you tell me he was going to be a good passer in the NFL. There's no way you could have come up with that. Even you go back even the beginning part of last year, he was struggling with the passing game, all over the place. And then all of a sudden it comes on. Mm-hmm. And I know in Josh's case, he changed his mechanics a little bit, and he didn't do it. He worked with his quarterback coach, which is Jordan Palmer. I don't know who Lamar Jackson has, but you can fix these things. Mm-hmm. And it's a proven fact now, where we used to think, and it was, throughout the league, that was the common thinking that, that guy's never going to become accurate. And you go back to those drafts to list, he's inaccurate, he's going to struggle. Well, guess what? Those guys are two Pro Bowlers.
Yep, exactly.
And they're still very young in their careers.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is good news. And do you think that because the pro game is started to adopt a lot of college schemes that's helped quarterbacks become more accurate?
It's a good question, but the similarity is that you're playing a lot more spread offenses in the league and playing from the gun. But the complexity of the passing game hasn't changed. The route tree hasn't changed. What the receivers are doing hasn't changed. It's just, it's how they look at the field. But I think it's, you used to say you had to sit the quarterback and let them learn. Well, now part of it, it's like you got to make a decision. You got 4 years to make a decision. So you're almost rushed at getting him in too soon, and some guys may bomb. I mean, a couple of these guys in this class so far this year, they've been average. Mm. Trey Lance can't get on the field. Nobody knows what he can do. Yeah. And that's probably because of his background. That's the best thing. But the guy in New York, he hasn't done anything. Mm-hmm. He's been terrible. And I think Trevor Lawrence has been up and down. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right now, the two best quarterbacks from last April's class are Jones and Fields. Ironically, the last two taken.
Yeah, how about that?
Taken fourth and fifth are the best two.
Right.
And I think that's going to go on because I think that today Jones is the better player. And because part of it was the offense, he played in a very pro style offense at Alabama. And so that had him a little bit more prepared. Mm-hmm. But I think when you look at the ceiling, that Justin will surpass him. Will it be next year? Maybe. But
Mhm.
I think you've seen just a huge jump in Justin Fields the last 2 ball games.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for more of it. I'm really interested in seeing what they do, because they do all that self-scouting during the bye week, and both offensively and defensively. And they'll throw stuff out of the playbook. They'll just eliminate it. We're not going to use this for the rest of the year.
Mhm.
But it's what are they going to do differently offensively and defensively, because in Justin's case, because he has shown improvement, and he sees the field better, he makes quicker decisions. There's still things he can't do, and I'll go back to just the way he throws the ball. He's got that thing, and that's got to be an off-season adjustment.
Yeah.
Because it's got to be something you work on day after day after day. Every time I watch Aaron Rodgers, it's just I'd like to take a stopwatch just to see how quick. I guarantee it's less than a half a second from the time he takes the snap from center and the ball's out of his hand on some of those bubble screens.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like one motion. He gets the snap, boom.
Yep. And he flicks it. Yeah.
Right away. And Justin can't do that yet. And when he can, that's what makes those plays go.
Mhm.
Is
Remember-
how quick he gets the ball out of his hand.
Right. I remember reading an article. It's vague in my mind right now, but it was about Aaron Rodgers' throwing motion at Cal was totally different than what he has shown in the pros, because he went through a rehabilitation of his throwing motion once he became a Green Bay Packer. Do you recall anything like that with
I don't, but that tape's available.
Yeah.
You can go back and look at it, and it'd be interesting. In fact, I'll do it before the next show, and just
cool.
Look at it and say, hey, what's different about it now? It's very tight now.
Yeah, man, he is.
And like Drew Brees is the same way. Brady's the same way. They just get the ball out of their hands so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it's experience. Part of it is changing your mechanics a little bit. But it's not something that you can, on Monday say, well, okay, I'm going to change it, and Sunday it's done. Because you're going to always revert back to what you've been doing, what the habit is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes, I know, like with Josh Allen talked about this extensively. It took him months during the off season where he worked on it every single day with his quarterback coach just to change some things. And that brought him up. I mean, his accuracy from 2019 to 2020 jumped 10 points.
Wow.
You never see that.
Yeah.
Went from 59% to almost 70% from 2019 to 2020.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. What the oh, darn it. I lost my thought on the next question. Oh, I remember.
All old age. You're catching up to me.
Oh, my goodness. You ain't kidding. I was going to ask about Trevor Lawrence. Do you think that he would be having the same kind of output as Mac Jones if he were a New England Patriot?
Damn straight.
Yeah, me too.
But I think some of it, though, with Mac, he's very, very smart. Now, I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence isn't, but that was the strong point of Mac Jones, was how smart he was, and his ability to read defenses right off the bat. So instincts, that type of thing, is just his overall intuitiveness, that put him at the top of the class. And, he had all those rumors that he might go 3 to San Francisco. And that's why, because when you watch that tape, you saw that decision-making.
Yep.
He doesn't make bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And, and he's carried it over. And part of it is the coaching staff they have at New England, which is very, very strong. Yeah,
indeed. 4,000 Clover says Lawrence will be the next Peyton Manning. He'll soon break all kinds of regular season records, but he'll fold in the postseason. He doesn't want it bad enough. I wonder why 4,000 Clover.
That's Matt Stafford. He just described Matt Stafford.
Boy, you are so right about that. What do you think? By the way, the Detroit Lions actually tied their opponent last week. Do you think that will be the closest they come to sniffing a victory this year?
I think because it's a short week and it's in Detroit on Thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
that the Bears game's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, it always is down there. Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, when that's on Thanksgiving, I mean, their record on Thanksgiving at home, the Lions record is pretty darn good, I think. Now, I'm probably totally off, and they probably got a losing record. But I just think, I've been watching that game on Thanksgiving for years, and a lot of times they're a pronounced underdog and they win the game.
Mm. All right. I want, before we talk about the offense, I want to share with you one more soundbite from Sean Desai. And we know that the Dolphins had success playing man-to-man defense against the Ravens last week, and they blitzed the hell of a lot. So Desai was asked about, potentially playing man coverage versus Lamar, and what isn't that dangerous, because you're basically defensive backs are turning their back to the quarterback. This is his response.
You guys have played more man coverage this season than you did last year. Is that tricky against a guy like him if you're asking your cornerbacks to turn their backs to him?
It can be, but you look at the Dolphins game. That's all they played. And they had some success versus that. So, the scheme stuff I've told you guys, right? That's half the battle, right? And getting the guys in position, that's my half of the battle. I got to make sure our guys know that and execute that. And then the execution's the other half. You got to win one-on-ones in this league. Whether it's a zone one-on-one or a man one-on-one, at some point you're going to get isolated. And at some point we're going to get isolated versus Lamar Jackson in the open field and versus the running backs in the open field. And we got to make tackles. We got to get the guys down. We got to swarm to the ball. We got to have that type of relentless mentality and that pursuit. And when we get a blocker on us, we got to be physical. And we got to get off blocks and make plays.
I thought that was really honest on his part, because that has been a problem with the Bears defense, not winning their one-on-one battles. In fact, sometimes some of the defenders appear, to my untrained eye, as being a little lazy when it comes to shedding a blocker. Your thoughts?
Well, I just don't think when they were playing really good early in the year, they weren't really doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Lately, it's been they haven't. The word I would use is finish. You got to start the play, you got to finish the play, and you got to have solid effort throughout the play, and you got to and finishing is ending up, making the play. For an offensive lineman, you can come off the ball real good and get initial movement, but if you don't stay with that block, you're not finishing the block. And so that's what the defense as a whole has got to do. Now, I'm listening to that soundbite. He's not going to give away what he's going to do in the game. Why should he do that?
Right.
But part of me thinks that, in order to play man coverage, you got to have good man corners to do that. And let me back up just to say one thing. One guy you got to give credit to on the defense that really was struggling earlier in the year and he got benched and now he's playing good is Duke Shelley.
Mm.
The last few games, he's been really strong. But anyway, get back to the defense. The first thing I thought of listening to those sound bites is the pass rush isn't necessarily as important this week as keeping Lamar Jackson in the pocket. Do you follow what I'm saying? So
yes.
You don't let him break contain. Don't let him get out on the perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
Make him throw the ball.
That's
because
key.
Where he makes his plays is when he's ad-libbing.
Mm-hmm. Schoolyard.
He's really good. He's really good throwing the ball on the run. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you can contain him, keep him, draw you here and keep him inside that U. then you got a lot better chance of beating him. So because he's a tough guy to sack just because of his maneuverability and his elusiveness.
Yeah.
So to me, it's keep him in the pocket, make him throw the ball, don't let him get on the perimeter.
Is the interior pass rush, is that how important is that against a guy like Lamar Jackson?
Well, you want to get a push.
Mm-hmm.
But again, now there's been a couple times, and I don't remember if it was the last game or the game before, where the pass rush was actually good, but you had three of the defensive linemen like shoulder to shoulder by the time they were 3 or 4 yards into the offensive backfield there, and then the quarterback was able to escape. And I don't remember if he ran or he made a big play. I just remember that they were all grouped together, and that shouldn't happen because that leaves a big gap.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I want to turn our attention to the offense, and in particular, I'd like to talk about Cole Kmet, because Cole got an awful lot of criticism from fans early in the season. And I was like, you guys really need to calm down. It takes a tight end 2-3 years to get acclimated to the offense. And Bill Lazor was asked about Cole Kmet today, and this is what he had to say, and I'd love to get your reaction on the other side.
Tight end is you do so many different jobs, and the easiest way to gauge a tight end is by the amount of balls they catch and yards they have and touchdowns. But if the offense at times chooses to use you as a protector, the fact is Cole can pass protect defensive ends. If at times they use you front side or back side on blocking, that's part of the job. And as we've talked about in here, for a number of weeks, we've chosen to run the ball at a high rate, and so then that's their part. So some of his development and growth probably just doesn't show up in the whatever stat lines, but I think it's continued to go. So I feel good about the way he approaches meetings, the way he communicates with the quarterback, the way he deals in the tight end room. So I just think that this is what a pro player does. This is how an NFL tight end advances.
I love that guy. I love the way he's on.
I'm going to use the word evolve instead of advances, but I agree with them 100%.
Yeah.
And it is to the common fan, he's looking at 6 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown. Okay, when there's so much more to it. A tight end is not, he's part offensive lineman, part receiver. Now, in today's game, a lot of these guys are flexed out all the time. And so really they're more receiver. The Bears don't do that, and Cole Kmet isn't that guy, even if they did do that a lot. When they're playing with 2 tight ends, he's the Y.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy at the end of the line of scrimmage. And so he is a blocker, and he's a very good blocker. And, he can knock people off the ball, knock them on their ass. He can pass protect. And that's all part of grading a player. So if he was in a role of strictly being a move tight end, call him an H-back, call him an F, whatever, terminology is in certain offenses, then, you may have an argument, but that's not his position with the Chicago Bears. And you're right, Aldo. It takes time. And part of it, and everybody forgets about this, you got a damn rookie quarterback. Okay? And that game is going, pew, 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 it's zipping all around him. And, how long did it take him to find A-Rob?
Yep,
exactly. It's just the last game that he started getting some targets.
Exactly.
And it's been the last 3 games that Kmet's been getting targets.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is Justin Fields growing on the field and the game's slowing down for him.
Right. Like this play here, this completion to Cole over the middle. I mean, that took some guts on Justin's part to just fire that ball in there, because he had a defender to his left and one to his right.
No, he to use the proverbial thread the needle.
Yeah, right.
He did that on that. That's a tight window throw.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Nagy would say that's a pro throw. You know, and it is. And that doing first attempting a throw like that, second completing the throw, throwing and the ball placement being good, that is showing the growth of Justin Fields as a quarterback.
Mm-hmm. And then he completed that long pass here on 2nd down and 2. Great play call, and he hits Cole Kmet. I really love that. Got it in slow motion here. Let me go a little further up. But this is the type of stuff that we should start seeing on a more regular basis as these two guys start to communicate better with one another.
Right. Well, and again, it's not necessarily Kmet. There's games where Kmet's been open and Justin just hasn't seen him.
Yep.
Okay. Or got the ball or gone to somebody else. And it's as Justin grows, the productivity of the receivers is going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Be it Kmet or A-Rob or anybody, Mooney, it's all really going to be, you know, the same thing. And, you know, let's go back. Everybody said, you got to play Justin. You got to play Justin. Oh, okay. They put in Justin. Now you better be patient and you got to go up with, you got to live with the bad as well as the good. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be more bad than there is good.
Mm-hmm. Even the rest of the season, right?
Right. Yep. Because he's still learning the game.
Yeah. What are your expectations, realistic expectations for Justin Fields based on what you have seen him do so far, plus the roster around him and the coaching around him? Do you see there being a possibility that he can make a monumental leap from where he is now to a quarterback who could be a top tier 2 quarterback at the end of the season? Is that possible?
I don't know if it's going to by the end of the season, because now, you know, let's look at Kansas City's quarterback. He played one game as a rookie,
mm-hmm.
but he spent that whole year learning, and then he got to play year 2, and just because he spent that year learning, he was able to, you know, all hands on deck right away, you know, and I think, you know, you only can gauge it on what you've seen. Mm-hmm. And in the last 2 games, we've seen Justin make some big throws. You know, just think about the Pittsburgh game. The only thing they did wrong with that is they scored too fast. But he had to, if they were going to win the game, he had to take them. That was what, an 80-yard drive, 75-yard drive. Mm-hmm. He had to take them the length of the field and get the ball in the end zone. And he did.
Yep.
You know, he just did it too fast.
Yeah.
But, you know, gave Pittsburgh too much time. But, you know, a more part of that's the learning process too. Don't score too quickly.
Right. And at this point in his career, I'm like, score whenever you can as quickly as possible, because there's no guarantee. You know, people are saying on social media they should have, you know, run out a couple plays before putting it into the end zone. That's easier said than done. You could.
Well, yeah, because you know everything. The play was called. He saw the guy and he threw the ball. It was a touchdown.
It was a beautiful throw too.
There's nothing wrong with that. You just wish it would. That's hindsight, and hindsight doesn't mean shit. You know what? We all know the same thing. The referees cost the Bears that game.
Yep.
There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the refs, except for the taunting call, and you know, you probably saw my thing. I said, I guarantee you that he will appeal that $5,900 fine. And I don't know how they come up with these fines either. I mean, it's got to be a percentage of what your base pay is, because it was $5,962 or something. Like
yeah.
That. How do they? You know, where do they get these figures? Because it's not the same for every guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's not probably making a lot of money. Cassius.
No, he's making. Cassius Marsh is he's brought up off the practice squad, so he's getting veteran minimum for that game.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when you think about that $5,900 is a lot of freaking money.
Oh yeah.
When you're, on a practice squad one week and you're on the 53 the next week, because that's a big chunk of the practice squad money. Hell, he's been if he was getting practice squad money, he would have been in the hole.
Yeah.
For the week. But anyway, I guarantee you he's going to appeal it. And my thinking is either the fine will get totally rescinded, because I get what Perry Fuel said, that was good. He's got to say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when they do it, when he appeals it, it goes in front of an arbitrator. And so now the arbitrator can cut the fine to a more fair level. He can rescind the fine totally, or say, no, this is what you got to pay. So it's like one of three different things. But as far as other calls, the league has already admitted there are at least three calls that were totally wrong. And one was the block that caught the non-block that cost the Bears a touchdown.
That's right. And maybe the game, right?
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Back to the defense here. CJ Williams has a question, because I'm hearing a lot of this. Fans are starting to lose their patience with Kindle Vildor. He's had a couple of tough, challenging games. What do you think about R.D. Burns maybe coming in for Vildor? I know you're high on Vildor, and you think that he can pull out of this?
Yeah, I think he's got to play. You get better by playing. Burns doesn't even get active.
That's got to tell you something.
Right. I mean, and it's a former first-round pick that the Steelers gave up on. So now, if he had a strong preseason and he was active for all these games, well, then you'd say, okay. Don't forget, in practice, they're running 7-on-7. They're running 11-on-11. These guys are at coverage, and Burns, in his role, he's playing on the scout team for most of practice, so he's getting a lot of reps. If he was showing enough that he should play on Sunday, they'd be dressing him on Sunday.
Yep. And you've got to make a determination on whether Vildor should be your starting cornerback next season, or you're going to prioritize that in your off-season work in terms of acquiring another cornerback to replace him. Right.
You're going to either go to free agency or you're going to go to the draft, one or the other. In the draft, in fact, I was talking to Ballard yesterday, and you say, well, we got to get a corner. And he goes, I just haven't taken one high. And I said, Chris, we've had these conversations for 20 years. You got to take one high if you want a good one. If you're getting one where they took Vildor, you're getting lucky. And, and I brought up a study I did. My last draft was in New York, was 2001, and just a couple weeks before I came here. And we took a corner in the first round in New York, and out of Syracuse. His last name was Allen. But I did a study. They asked me to do a study on how many corners went in each round. And this is 20 years ago now, and it holds true today. Because I go back to it and I check it all the time. But in the first three rounds of every draft, 12 to 15 corners go. It averages out 12 to 15 corners in the first three rounds every single year. So if you just think about it, you're going to wait till the fourth round to take a corner. The best shot you've got is like 13, and you're probably getting 16 or 17.
What is the thinking among player personnel directors, scouting directors on position groups, and who you can more likely find a starter in those mid and maybe even late rounds?
Well, I interior offensive linemen, you can get a little later. You got to go value a position. Interior defensive linemen, interior offensive linemen, receivers. I think if you got to be lucky, but you can get them at any time.
Darnell Mooney.
yeah, we've seen that all over the league. You see guys, corners. You got to get lucky. You got to find a guy, and you use the word traits. That's what Kendall Vildor has. He has traits. He's not height wise. He's not ideal. He's like 5'10", 5'10 and a quarter, something like that. But he's got 32-inch arms, and he runs real fast, and he can jump out of the building. So he's got the physical skills that you want. Now he's got to play, and you get better by playing more.
Yeah, and I'm trying to see if I can find that highlight of. Let me see if I have it here. The one play that he gave up to Chase Claypool, Kendall Vildor. I thought that his coverage on that.
Oh, the one in the end zone for the touchdown.
Yeah,
his coverage. There's nothing wrong with his coverage.
Yeah,
Chase Claypool's about 6'10".
That's the problem.
And he's got he can tie his shoes standing up. His arms are so long.
That's right. I don't think this is
his coverage was very good on that play.
Yeah, I thought
it was an excellent throw by Roethlisberger, and it was a great adjustment to the ball.
Yeah, this is not it.
That's not the play.
No, it's not. That's actually Duke Shelley on him. Yeah, wrong play. Anyway, but you know what play I'm talking about. I thought his coverage was really good.
It was good. There's nothing wrong with his coverage on that play at all.
And
You're not going to put it this way. You plus and minus every play when the coaches do the grading. They aren't putting a minus on that play.
Yeah, see, he's on my list of players that I think some fans are unfairly blaming because they got to give some time for development. They got to give some time. They got to assess the opponent. There's so many factors that go on. I can't imagine ever being a scout like you have been and to lead a team of scouts. There's so many details when it comes to evaluating players. It's unbelievable.
But you got to look at a lot of the little things. You're not just it's the sum of the parts. And you got a checklist on all sorts of different things. And you got to go through that. And by the way, as long as we're talking scouting, and I just found this out yesterday, and that's ended up why I was talking to Ballard, because I get two calls because I'm helping out with the East-West game a little bit.
Right.
And so one guy calls me yesterday. And he was pissed, real pissed. He goes, "Do you know they're not having a weigh and measure at the East-West game?" I said, "No." He goes, "Yeah, Galco sent out a thing today." I said, "I didn't know." I said, "But I'll talk to him." And so he goes on, "We got to have that. Part of the evaluation process, you want to see the body types, yada, yada, yada."
Right.
I said, I get it. I said, I will call him. I wasn't off the phone with this guy for 3 minutes, and the phone rings again, and it's Ballard. And same thing.
Oh my goodness.
And so I said, let me talk to Eric and I'll call you back. And so I call Eric. He goes, "Greg, nothing I did. That came from the league."
Really? The NFL?
The NFL, East-West Senior Bowl Combine, done with the weigh and measure. They're going to do it privately.
Oh, so they're not going to have every single person in the media and scouts and an auditorium.
Well, the media never saw it at the Combine to begin with.
That's correct.
Okay,
at the Senior Bowl, right?
Right. And years ago when I started in the league, the media never saw it. It was strictly team personnel. But there one player in particular has tweeted out a few times, and it's Kaepernick, about how demeaning it was, and it was like slavery, where we're the slave and they're the slave buyers at the auction, and it was like, give you a fucking break.
This is so silly. It's just gotten so unbelievably silly with some of the complaints. And I'm a liberal, but political correction has gone way overboard.
I mean, it's like Chris was saying, we want to see what the guy's body looks like.
Absolutely.
Is he fat? Is he tight? Does like an offensive lineman? Does he have wide hips, wide shoulders, a big bubble?
Mm-hmm.
These are all things you want to see. It's in growth potential.
Mm-hmm.
And they part of it, they would measure wrists and ankles.
Yeah.
At the combine, and because you're trying to figure out, okay, this guy's 290. Can I get him to 315? And he's not going to be too heavy or too fat at 315. And there's a lot of science that's involved in some of this stuff, and so what they're going to do now is they're going to do it privately, videotape it, and send it to the teams.
Do you think that might be because of COVID concerns?
No,
huh?
No, it has nothing to do with COVID. It's what I said. People. There's some players that complain, and I guarantee you, it's about not even close to a dozen. Oh, somebody.
There he is.
Fido's pissed.
I feel sorry for that guy.
Wait, I'm just gonna shut the door. Just
you go right ahead. You go right ahead. I'm gonna let people know that tonight Danny Shimon and I are going to be right here on the Barroom Network here on our YouTube channel, and we're going to look at some tape of Justin Fields and talk about his progress to date, and we'll also play some of the interviews from the defensive and offensive coordinators. So we'll react to that and hopefully react to your questions. Hopefully you guys can join us here tonight at 9 p.m. Central. It is Bare Truth with Danny Shimon and myself.
What'd you talk about when I was gone?
Well, Danny is looking at tape right now as we speak of Justin Fields. So he wanted to break down that last drive against the Steelers to talk a little bit about his progression and stuff. And as you know, Danny was one of your pupils. So he tends to know what he's talking about sometimes.
Danny's good.
He is good. All right. So right now, this team is headed towards mediocrity. But is any chance for us diehard Bears fans, any chance you could see this team sneaking into a playoff spot?
Well, it starts this week. You got to win. It's real simple, Aldo. You got to take one game at a time. You got to win this week. Then you got to have a good day of practice and win next Thursday. And then you got to, and I think if they lose this week and they lose Thanksgiving, it's all over.
Oh my
gosh. Yeah, but I already said what I thought. I think Detroit's going to be a little tougher game than experts think it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this game is winnable. I don't think the Ravens are quite as good as what they were expected to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think, Miami gave them all they can handle. Miami stinks. So it's not that the Bears are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but it's still it's a home game. You're going to have a home crowd. And what we got to see is as good as well as Justin has played the last two games, it's really been the second half that he's come on.
That's right. He hasn't played four quarters yet.
We got to see some stuff in the first half, in the first quarter. Now they've gone down and they've scored a couple times, field goal or touchdown. But you got to put 14 or 17 points up in the first half.
I wanted to ask you about the wide receiver position. I've been down on those, the third stringer, fourth stringer, fifth stringer, the lack of depth at the wide receiver position. But could I be off a little bit here? Could this just be the issue of the rookie quarterback, just like he is with A-Rob, trying to find that timing and so forth? So maybe those guys aren't as bad as I've been proclaiming them to be.
I think Goodwin, you look at him, like he made a couple big plays.
Right.
Probably there's a few more out there for him. He just, you got a guy who's can't see all the field yet, or he's just starting to see all the field, and being able to spread the ball around and get the ball to these guys. It's a matter of being. Fans are by nature very, very impatient, and you got what you wanted. Now you got to go with the ups and downs of it. You got to be patient. So, but to get with your makeup in the wide receiver room, your first three and probably your first four, you're going to keep on talent. 5 and 6, those guys got to be able to play special teams, and 4's got to be able to play some teams. Okay, so you could have a lesser talented player be your 5th receiver, maybe even your 4th receiver, because he's far better than the more talented guy when it comes to special teams.
Yep. He can tackle.
Or he can block, he can tackle, whatever. He can cover. He can get off of blocks when he's running downfield. He's tough. So that's part of the makeup. And you'll see guys get cut. How do you get cut? Well, because he wasn't worth a damn on special teams. That's why.
That's right.
and so and that's your makeup, and people always forget about that that's a very, very important part of the game, and you got to have the right guys on your roster. You got to have about 5 or 6 guys that are on that roster for one reason only, and that's playing specials.
Yeah, guys like Ryan Nall, right? He's
right.
A special teams guy.
Yeah, I don't care what Cordelli Patterson has done down in Atlanta. That guy was a hell of a teams player. Covering kicks, returning kicks. I mean, he's a Pro Bowler as a special team player.
Dented Fender, actually, we kind of talked about this earlier. Dented Fender wanted to know how come Newsome isn't getting a look. And you said earlier that you are hoping that he might get a look in the games ahead.
I think part of it is, his only special teams value right now is as a returner, and they got better guys, or at least they think they got better guys. And number 2 is the adjustment to playing wide receiver in the NFL for some is huge. And I just don't think he's, my thinking is that the coaching staff feels he's not ready.
Yeah. And
so that's why he's on the practice squad.
Well, and he missed a lot of time in preseason because of that injury, right?
Yeah. He missed some really valuable time, and that goes back to OTAs and minicamp also. He missed a lot of valuable time. So, the rookie year for him might be a wash. Now, again, you get knocked out of the playoffs, mathematically knocked out of the playoffs. Maybe say, okay, let's find out what Des Ferguson can do.
Yeah. Last question I have for you is, we've talked about this before, the new rule that allows NFL teams, if they get permission from the team that the coach is currently at, that they can start to interview candidates for head coaching jobs. So last 2 weeks. So if Bears management is wavering on the GM, but want to get a head start on talking to coaches, would it be possible? Do you foresee this in is there any possibility that Ryan Pace could begin the interview process but not finish it?
That's possible.
Wow.
It's weird. I think that, and I may be totally wrong. I think they're tied to the hip. And So if you're going to get rid of one, you're going to get rid of both. So then who does the interviews?
Mm-hmm.
And in a case like that, then you get somebody from the league, an expert from the league, like Ernie Corsi did, and who helps you out with that.
Mm.
And then go from there. I mean, I already know who if I was going to bring in a coach, I got my 1A and 1B.
I know who 1A is, the guy from Buffalo, right?
And 1B is the defensive coordinator at Tampa.
Oh, yeah, Todd Bowles. Yeah.
Todd Bowles. I've worked with Todd. I know how good Todd is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Todd, I think, deserves a chance. Todd is a disciplinarian too. You aren't going to see mental mistakes with Todd Bowles because he'll kick your ass if you make mental mistakes.
I love it. That's the kind of coach I want in Chicago.
Well, I mean, he's not a Ditka.
No, yeah, I don't want that.
He's a hard. He can be a hard ass.
Yeah, you need that. You know, NFL players, and you know this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but NFL players, most of them need a good kick in the ass every once in a while. You know, the game is hard to play. It's physically grueling, and you got to push guys, and you got to kick them in the ass, and you got to yell at them, and you got to scream at them, and every once in a while you get a guy that you got to talk soft and tender to, but for the most part, they all want their ass kicked, right?
Well, it's changed since I played. It just reminded me of a story though, because I had a coach who every Friday used to just kick my ass.
Really?
Yeah, only because the first time he did it, I played really good. You know, the next day, and so he's like, "Oh, I guess I got to do this all the time." And finally, I told him, I said, "Hey, coach." I said, it goes in one ear and goes out the other. It worked once. I know what I got to do, you know?
I love it. Yeah, once is enough, coach. You did it to me once. I got the message. That's all I need. All right, so we got you on record as saying that you got a really good feeling about the Bears beating the Ravens. Do you predict scores? Do you ever go that far when talking about forecasting?
No, because you know, weather plays so much into it.
Yeah.
And I always look at the forecast, and right now the preliminary forecast is mid 40s, and it says showers ending in the morning. But it's Thursday. Does that, you know, come Sunday morning till 2:00?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so who knows? But weather will play into it. You know, Baltimore coming here at 46-degree weather. That's not good. Oh, it's going to be. It could be the same thing in Baltimore this time of year. Remember a few years ago? Well, it wasn't a few years ago because I was still working for the Bears. We had to go to Baltimore in a December game, and there was like 2.5 feet of snow on the ground in Baltimore.
Wow, that's not fun.
And yeah, so you know they can get the same kind of weather you get here. They just don't get it as often. Now, when I was with, you know, DC in the XFL, you know, I was expecting some cold weather in the spring. I don't think we ever practiced in 30-degree weather. It was always in the 40s and 50s. And that was in February and beginning of March before the league folded.
Mm-hmm. Hey, our good friend Don Burrs, and he's a diehard Detroit Lions fan, and he really likes his coach Dan Campbell. He says he's the best coach in the NFC North. What are your thoughts on Dan Campbell now that you've seen him coach 9 games with an 0-8-1 record?
You know, he's first of all, I know Dan Campbell. We drafted him in New York when I was there.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that once. Yeah.
You know, so, and I mean, he probably wouldn't remember me if hey Dan, how you doing? You know, because that was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was, you know, 24, 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, he's got that grit to him that fans love because he's your proverbial tough guy.
Right.
Okay, so fans really like that. But in the NFL is the results business. What have you done for me lately? and they haven't done anything. Now part of it is they're already figuring out that Goff can't play.
That's right.
Is that Campbell's fault? No.
Nope.
That's the GM's fault.
Mm-hmm.
And the GM had him in LA. And as long as we're talking about that, we can talk about Stafford because he's peed down his leg the last 2 games too. And for the Rams. Right. Stafford was the talk of the league. Oh, he's going to be MVP. Yeah. Well, he threw 2 picks on Monday night. He very easily could have thrown 5 or Sunday night.
Now, you detected this about him when he was in college, that he just didn't have the mental fortitude to play at a high level consistently.
In big games.
Right.
They didn't win big games.
Yeah, that's a problem.
I mean, it goes back. He did not win an SEC title yet back then, and Alabama was not dominating when he was at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Just go check the record books and see who was at Alabama then. And, Saban was just getting there. And they're just starting to put that program together. So, but Matthew Stafford, I may be wrong in this. I don't even think he got him to an SEC championship game, let alone an SEC championship. I may be off on that one. I used to know for sure. But I just have always thought that he's a pretty quarterback. He puts up great numbers.
Mm-hmm. Especially in the fourth quarter.
But when the game gets tough, he's nowhere to be found.
One last
question. I'm not saying he's a wuss at all. I'm just saying that, throughout his career and going back to college, when he's got to win, he doesn't win.
Mm-hmm. What do you? Somebody in the chat room, who was it? It was Dented Fender. He was talking about Lovie Smith's teams. They were disciplined. Tell us about how disciplined those Lovie Smith teams were.
Well, it's something you worked on in practice, with Lovie, and only because I saw it every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like turnovers. Lovie was huge on turnovers, and so they practiced forcing turnovers every day. When you got a 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 in practice, even there, now when you don't have pads on, you just got shells and a helmet on.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are still trying to strip the ball every single play. And so what do? We force turnovers in a game because they practiced it.
Yeah, that is so key. And, since Lovie has been gone, I haven't seen, Fangio did it for a couple of seasons. It seemed like we really had a focus on turnovers. But boy, those Lovie teams were just so great at really focusing in on turning over the ball. And of course, Peanut Tillman took that to a whole nother level with this punching the football.
But you had continuity too, for 9 years or something.
Yeah.
Basically playing the same scheme. And so you were looking for it made scouting a lot easier because you were looking for the same type of player. We had a profile for each position on defense, and there's guys that, you could go into school and there could be like a Ted Washington type.
Mm-hmm.
Forget about him. He wasn't going to play in that defense.
Yeah.
So you'd put a grade on him for the league, and you got to give him his due if the guy's good or whatever. But you're right. We used to have a plus. Nothing at all. We'd call that vanilla, or a minus next to the guy's grade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's say it was a 6.5 plus. 6.5 plus meant he was a fit for what we do.
Okay.
A 6.5 vanilla, so nothing after the 5, meant he's not a perfect fit, but we can live with him.
Okay.
And a minus meant, see ya. He can't play. Not that he can't play. He can't play in our scheme.
Yeah, it's not a scheme fit. Yeah.
So all those guys with the minuses, we get rid of those guys in the first week of December. When our scouts came in December.
Is it tough for scouting departments right now if they feel like this coaching staff could be totally different next season? You don't know. You just drafting athletes. I mean, you're just scouting athletes and
Well, you're grading them for their talent value.
right.
Okay, so now, like I said in December we'd eliminate a lot of those guys because they weren't fits, but it's not like you can resurrect them.
Right.
Okay, so all of a sudden you're gonna, but when you do a scheme change, we got lucky. Let's go back because it's an interesting topic. So we got Dick Duran here, and Greg Blotch was the defensive coordinator. And Greg's philosophy on defense was totally different than Lovey's. And even though we played a 4-man front, it was really like the old 3-4 rules, in that these guys were big 2-gap players. And you know what I mean by 2-gapper?
Right. Left.
So,
right.
So Keith Traylor, Ted Washington, Philip Daniels. Philip Daniels was the smallest guy, and he was about 315. And then you had Alex Brown over on the other side, and he was the pass rusher. But all the other guys were big 2-gappers. And you didn't have the speed and the quickness that we had on defense. So now Lovey comes in, and we know right away. I mean, we got rid of Ted and Traylor and Daniels that offseason because none of those guys could play in Lovey's scheme. And what did we do in the first 2 rounds that year? Tommy Harris and Tank Johnson.
Nice draft.
Because you had to get those guys who could play defensive tackle in his defense. You didn't want a big nose tackle. Anthony Adams was the nose tackle most of that time here. Anthony Adams weighed 300 pounds. a little chunkier now.
Yeah, I think so. Although I think he's actually lost a little weight. He's been doing all that dancing.
I'll tell you, now that was a very athletic guy. He's only 5'11 and a half, 6 feet tall, but he had long arms. So it allowed him to play taller, but very, very athletic. You can see that in his videos now. You can see some of that stuff.
Yeah.
The way he just moves around. He very, very light on his feet.
Very nimble. Hey, speaking of measuring arms, now that they're going to go to this private measurements of
they'll still do it.
So are you confident that it's going to be done well? Because you've talked about that before, that it's almost like an art to measure.
Well, I would think that, like at the combine, you're still going to have the same people doing it.
Gotcha.
It's just that it's not going to be in that room that was off to the side. It was in they had bleachers set up around it.
Yeah.
There was a stage and then bleachers set up in a U-type shape. And it was packed with coaches. I know what I'd be interested in seeing. What are they going to do with the speaking of doing things in front of a lot of people? Hell, what about the weightlifting?
Yeah.
That was the same thing.
That was never open to the media.
No, but the 225, that was, in fact, it was done in the same room as it did of the weigh and measuring.
I got to squeeze in this question here. It's from Laz. He says, should the Bears hire a football guy over the GM like John Elway is with the Broncos? And would it be beneficial to bring in an ex-Bear to the front office to instill some Bear pride?
We've already talked about that in previous shows. The football, your GM is supposed to be your football guy. Ted Phillips, and I got no complaints with Ted Phillips at all. I know Ted very, very well. I know exactly what his job is. I think I've said on this show, his office was directly across the hall from mine. I know what the guy did. When I first got there, his job was getting Soldier Field done. That was the main. I mean, obviously, everything else, tickets and marketing. When you just look at all the suite sales, the marketing, all that, merchandise sales. That's what Ted does.
Yes.
Okay.
And he must be doing it very well.
And now he's going to be getting that new stadium built.
Mm-hmm.
And he's already up to here in it. I guarantee it. So he isn't going anywhere.
Could you see, given that Ryan Pace is credited with being responsible for that $100 million makeover of Hallis Hall, could you potentially see that as that was a training ground for Ryan Pace to maybe move up into that Ted Phillips position and handle? No, huh? He just doesn't have the finance background like a Ted Phillips.
Right. No, and Ted's got a master's degree in business from Northwestern. Went to Notre Dame, and his master's is from Northwestern. What's a Kellogg School of Business? Is that Northwestern? Okay.
Yes, it is.
So, and Ted's a sharp guy. He gets hammered in the press, I think, unfairly. I've never had any problems dealing with him. Mm-hmm. I know if I had to do my budget for my department, and if something, so now we're 4 months into the budget year, 5 months into the budget year, and I need something that wasn't on the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Knock on the door, go and talk to him why I need it, and why it would be important for us. And he'd either give it thumbs up or thumbs down, but I guarantee you 90% of the times it was thumbs up.
Yeah, you got a sense that he was listening and giving you a fair shot to present your facts, as opposed to somebody else who was saying, "No, the budget is final." I hate those people.
No, he was very, very flexible.
That's good. That's good.
And when a few days before the draft, Jerry and I, Jerry had a conference room. We'd meet. There'd be Ted, Jerry, and I, and we'd go over. This is our plan for the draft. He'd ask some questions. Okay.
Can you think of a question that he asked? Can you think of a question that he might have asked?
Well, do you think you can get this guy?
Okay.
And so, do we got to make a trade to get this guy? He'd ask fan questions, and I'm not degrading fans, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So that's the type of questions he'd ask. But now, when you're going to go out and sign a free agent, and you're going to give him a contract like they gave Khalil Mack, I guarantee he's involved. And he's involved in yay or nay.
Yeah, right.
What's it going to cost us?
Right. Because when the Khalil Mack transaction was done, George wanted to know, well, how much of a percentage is Khalil Mack's contract going to take out of the salary cap? I would imagine that's one of the questions he would have been most interested in.
Well, yeah, you're looking at that, but don't forget, throw out COVID, the cap usually goes up every year, and now it's going to continue to go up, and it's going to go with new TV deals. It's going to really jump up, but they've got agreements with the NFLPA on because there was losses from a year ago, that how they're going to basically spread that out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So for a couple of years, you're going to have the cap a little lower than, in other words, you're not going to see the jump that you would normally see. And part of it was this year, we're not even where they were supposed to be last year yet. And you usually get a $10, $12 million bump in the cap.
Right.
So you're going to start to see that come up again next year, but then after that, it's really going to skyrocket.
Last question. How many times have I said that? Sorry.
And I never get fucking overtime.
Not a penny. Period. Oh man, I forgot what I was going to ask. It was a good question too.
Hey, now that's twice. You really are getting old.
I am. I am. And my mom is starting to lose her memory too. So now I'm worried. Can I actually beat her? What I was going to ask, Well, you know what? I'll save it for next week because it'll open up a whole new can
Write
of
it
worms.
down. Write it down so you don't forget.
Then I'll forget where I wrote it down. I got problems.
I hear you.
You're the man, Greg Gabriel. Like George said in the chat that this is his weekly segment. And he also went on to say, you two guys should have your own radio show. Who do we call? Should we call Mitch Rosen over at the Score?
Sure.
Okay.
I'd rather go to ESPN, though.
Yeah, okay. I'll send them a demo tape of us. And then George asked, Aldo, do you have any crazy vacation stories from last week? Yeah, I'm going to share them on the Dan and Aldo show. That's where I can talk about my sex life and my bowel movement.
I didn't even want to hear
it. All right, we will be back on our regular time next Monday around 2-ish. We want to try to squeeze in that.
Victory Monday.
Yeah, Victory Monday. So you heard it here.
Calling it now.
All right, I love it.
I shouldn't do that because I'll jinx the team. But I'm saying it right now.
He didn't do that. He didn't do that. All right, Greg. We'll talk to you next week. Have a great weekend, and thank you everyone for listening in. There's one more show on the docket, one new live show, and that's with Danny Shimon tonight at 9:00. So hopefully you guys can join us then. Greg, we'll see you next week, brother.
Okay, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.